The morning fog lingered like a ghostly veil over the town of Ashbourne, a place where stories whispered through cobblestone streets and shadows played tricks on the eyes. Nestled at the edge of the town stood Silverstone House, a grand and imposing structure that seemed to watch over the valley with its myriad windows, each pane a mosaic of rumors and secrets. The house, with its ivy-clad walls and turrets reaching toward the sky, had become the subject of local legend. It was said to be haunted, a place where the past clung tightly to the present. To 17-year-old Ellie's fascination with Silverstone House had started years ago, when her grandmother, a woman with a penchant for storytelling, had spun tales of its former grandeur and whispered of the secrets it held. And so, Ellie found herself at the threshold of the house once again, her heart racing with anticipation. She glanced back at her best friend Theo, who was reluctantly tagging along, his expression a mix of skepticism and mild annoyance. "Do we really have to do this?" Theo asked, adjusting the collar of his jacket. "I mean, it's just an old house." Ellie flashed him a grin. "Where's your sense of adventure, Theo?" "Every great story starts with an old house, you know." He sighed, running a hand through his tousled hair. "Fine. But if we get caught, I'm blaming you." Ellie chuckled and pushed open the heavy oak door. The hinges groaned in protest, as if the house itself were waking from a long slumber. Inside, the air was musty, tinged with the scent of damp wood and faded memories. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light filtering through the stained glass windows, casting vibrant patterns on the worn carpet. As they stepped into the grand foyer, a sense of awe washed over Ellie. The space was vast, with a sweeping staircase that seemed to spiral into infinity. Portraits of stern-faced ancestors lined the walls, their eyes following the intruders with an eerie intensity. Ellie couldn't help but feel a connection to these forgotten faces, as if they were urging her forward, urging her to discover the truth hidden within the walls. They moved cautiously through the house, their footsteps echoing in the silence. It wasn't until they reached the study that Ellie felt the first real tug of mystery. The room was dark, the curtains drawn tight against the outside world. A heavy desk sat in the center, its surface cluttered with papers and trinkets. But it was the large, ornate mirror on the far wall that caught her attention. Unlike the rest of the room, it was spotless, its surface gleaming as if it had been polished just moments ago. "Theo, look at this," Ellie said, gesturing toward the mirror. Theo approached, his curiosity piqued despite himself. "It's just a mirror, Ellie." She moved closer, her reflection staring back at her with wide, curious eyes. As she reached out to touch the glass, a chill ran down her spine, and the air seemed to shimmer around her fingertips. Before Theo could respond, the light in the room flickered, and the temperature dropped suddenly. Ellie shivered, her breath visible in the cold air. The sensation was gone as quickly as it had come, leaving her both bewildered and exhilarated. "Maybe it's a draft," Theo suggested, though he sounded unconvinced. "Maybe," Ellie replied, though she wasn't so sure. There was something about the mirror that defied explanation, something that felt alive, as if it were observing them just as much as they were observing it. Determined to uncover the mirror's secrets, Ellie began to search the study for clues. She rifled through the papers on the desk, but they seemed to be nothing more than old letters and bills, remnants of a life once lived. It wasn't until she opened the drawer that she found something of interest. A small, leather-bound journal with a tarnished lock. Look at this, she said, holding up the journal for Theo to see. Theo took the journal from her, inspecting the lock. We could try picking it, he suggested, a mischievous glint in his eye. With a skill that surprised even himself, Theo managed to pop the lock open. The journal fell open in Ellie's hands, and she quickly began to skim the pages. The writing was old, the ink faded, and the script elegant yet difficult to decipher. But one name stood out among the rest. Eleanor. That's my name, Ellie whispered, a thrill running through her. Maybe it's a coincidence, Theo said, though his tone suggested he didn't quite believe it. Or maybe it's fate, Ellie replied, her eyes alight with excitement. Let's take it home and see if we can make sense of it. As they made their way back through the house, Ellie couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The portraits seemed to follow their every move, and the air hummed with a strange energy. She paused at the front door, casting one last glance back at the mirror. We'll be back, she promised softly, though she wasn't entirely sure to whom she was speaking. Outside, the fog had lifted, giving way to a bright autumn morning. The chill in the air was invigorating, and Ellie felt a renewed sense of purpose as she and Theo headed toward her house, the journal tucked safely under her arm. As they walked, Ellie couldn't help but wonder what secrets the journal held and how they might be connected to her own life. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying, and she knew that whatever lay ahead, she was ready to face it. Hey, Ellie, Theo said, breaking the silence. Do you really think there's something special about Silverstone House? Ellie considered his question, remembering the strange sensation in the study, the way the mirror seemed to call to her. I don't know, she admitted, but I intend to find out. Theo smiled, his reluctance giving way to a shared sense of adventure. I guess we're in this together then. Ellie nodded, feeling grateful for his companionship. Mystery, after all, was always better when shared. As they reached the gate to her house, the sun casting long shadows on the pavement, Ellie glanced back at Silverstone House, its silhouette stark against the morning sky. She had no idea what awaited them, what secrets lay hidden within its walls. But one thing was certain, the journey had begun, and there was no turning back. Little did she know, they were not the only ones interested in the secrets of Silverstone House. In the shadows, someone else was watching, waiting for the right moment to step into the light and claim the mystery for themselves. The sun had long dipped beneath the horizon, leaving the world bathed in the soft luminescence of moonlight, when Ellie finally decided to act on her curiosity. The Silverstone House stood in somber silence, a shadowy monolith against the starlit sky. Its presence loomed over the quiet street, its grand facade both alluring and intimidating. Ellie, with Theo beside her, stood at the edge of the property, a mixture of excitement and apprehension swirling in her chest. Are you sure about this? Theo's voice was barely above a whisper, a testament to the stillness of the night around them. His eyes flicked nervously between the house and Ellie, his mind torn between adventure and caution. Ellie nodded, her resolve firm despite the apprehension that whispered caution into her mind. I have to know what's inside, she replied, determination adding weight to her words. Her thoughts raced back to the moment in the study, the way the air seemed charged with potential, the mirror that felt alive under her gaze. It was as if the house itself was a puzzle, begging to be solved. Theo sighed, a mix of resignation and excitement coloring his tone. "All right," he said, casting one last glance over his shoulder, ensuring no one was watching. "Let's do this." They slipped through the wrought iron gate, careful to move silently so as not to disturb the tranquility of the night. The path leading to the grand entrance was overgrown, nature slowly reclaiming what had once been carefully maintained. As they approached the house, the sound of their footsteps seemed to echo, each step a reminder of the unknown that lay ahead. The front door creaked ominously as Ellie pushed it open, the sound reverberating through the empty halls like a ghostly welcome. Inside, the house was a world frozen in time. Dust particles danced in the moonlight that filtered through the grimy windows, highlighting the intricate woodwork and faded elegance of the decor. It was both beautiful and haunting, a testament to the lives that had once filled its rooms. "This place is unbelievable," Theo breathed, his eyes wide with awe as he took in the grandeur of the entrance hall. "It's like stepping back in time." Ellie nodded, her gaze sweeping over the space. The house was a relic of forgotten opulence, its grandeur diminished by years of neglect, but still whispering of the stories it held. She felt a strange sense of belonging, as if the house had been waiting for her to uncover its secrets. They moved further into the house, the creak of floorboards underfoot, the only sound in the oppressive silence. Their destination was the study, the room that had ignited Ellie's curiosity and set her on this path. As they walked, Ellie couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. The sensation was subtle, like a shadow at the edge of her vision, slipping away whenever she tried to focus on it. They reached the study, the door ajar as if welcoming them in. Ellie hesitated for a brief moment before stepping inside, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. The room was as she remembered it, the large mirror dominating one wall, its surface reflecting the moonlight with an ethereal glow. Theo followed her gaze to the mirror, a frown creasing his brow. "What's so special about this?" he asked, stepping closer to get a better look. Ellie shrugged, her eyes locked on the mirror. "I don't know," she admitted, "but there's something about it. It feels alive." Theo watched her for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "Alive?" he repeated, as if tasting the word for the first time. "That sounds unsettling." "It is," Ellie agreed, stepping closer to the mirror. Her reflection stared back at her, but there was something different about it, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. She reached out, her fingers brushing against the cool glass, and felt a strange sensation, as if the mirror had a pulse, a heartbeat echoing beneath the surface. Theo watched, his curiosity piqued. "What do you think it means?" he asked, his voice tinged with a mixture of fascination and trepidation. Ellie shook her head, her fingers lingering on the glass. "I don't know," she said, "but I think it has something to do with the house." They stood in silence, the weight of the mystery pressing down on them. The room seemed to hold its breath, the shadows deepening as the night wore on. Ellie felt a shiver run down her spine, a whisper of fear entwined with excitement. Suddenly, the mirror flickered, the glass shimmering as if alive with electricity. Ellie stumbled back, her heart racing. Theo caught her arm, steadying her as they both stared at the mirror in shock. "Did you see that?" Ellie gasped, her voice barely above a whisper. Theo nodded, his eyes wide with disbelief. "What was that?" he breathed, his gaze fixed on the mirror. Ellie shook her head, her mind racing as she tried to make sense of what she had seen. "I don't know," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "But I think we just found our first clue." The air thrummed with energy, the house seeming to awaken around them, its secrets unfurling like petals in the darkness. Ellie felt a thrill of excitement, despite the fear that lingered in the back of her mind. The mystery was deepening, drawing her in with its tantalizing allure. "We have to figure this out," Ellie said, her voice firm with determination. "There's something here, something important." Theo nodded, his expression resolute. "Yeah," he agreed, "but we need to be careful. There's no telling what we might find." Ellie nodded, knowing he was right. The house was an enigma, its secrets both a promise and a threat. But the lure of discovery was too strong, the pull of the unknown impossible to resist. As they turned to leave, Ellie cast one last glance at the mirror, its surface now calm and still. The house had begun to reveal its mysteries, and she knew there was no turning back. The journey had only just begun, and she was determined to see it through to the end. Unbeknownst to them, in the shadows of the house, someone else watched. A figure cloaked in darkness, their eyes intent on the two trespassers who had dared to awaken the secrets of Silverstone House. The figure smiled, their intentions hidden behind a mask of shadow. The game had begun, and they were ready to play. Ellie and Theo stepped out into the cool night air, the weight of the house's secrets heavy on their shoulders. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The mystery of Silverstone House was far from over, and they were inextricably bound to its unfolding. The moon hung low over Silverstone House, casting an eerie glow on its ancient stones. Shadows pooled around its base, whispering secrets into the night. Ellie and Theo stood in the driveway, the chilly air nipping at their skin as the adrenaline from their recent discovery began to wane. The weight of what they had uncovered in the house pressed heavily on their minds. Ellie shivered, not from the cold, but from the memory of the mirror's strange pull. It was as if it had spoken to her, its secrets woven into the fabric of the house, calling out to be uncovered. She glanced at Theo, his brow furrowed in thought, his eyes reflecting the same apprehension she felt. "We need to go back," Ellie said, breaking the silence. Her voice was firm, carrying a resolve that surprised even her. Theo nodded, his gaze still fixed on the looming shadow of the house. "I know, but we need to be careful. We don't know what we're dealing with." They began walking down the gravel path, the crunch of stones beneath their feet, the only sound amidst the stillness of the night. The figure in the shadows watched them leave, a smile tugging at the corners of their lips. The game had indeed begun, and they relished the thought of what was to come. Back at Ellie's home, they settled into the dimly lit living room, the air heavy with uncertainty. Books and papers were scattered across the coffee table, remnants of their earlier research into the history of Silverstone House. The room was cozy, a stark contrast to the chilling atmosphere of the house they had left behind. Ellie sank into the couch, pulling a book onto her lap. Its pages were filled with tales of the house's previous owners, a lineage steeped in mystery and rumors of hidden treasures and unsolved disappearances. The more they read, the more questions arose, each one more intriguing than the last. Theo leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his mind racing with possibilities. "What if the mirror is some sort of portal?" he mused. his voice low, as if afraid to give life to the thought. Ellie considered this, her fingers absently tracing the edge of the book. It did feel different, like it was more than just a reflection. She paused, remembering the sensation of being drawn into its depths. Maybe it's linked to whatever happened in the house. Theo nodded, his thoughts aligning with hers. There's definitely something about Silverstone House that feels unfinished, like it's waiting for something or someone. The conversation trailed off, both lost in thought. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows, as if echoing their uncertainty. But amid their apprehension, a determination began to take root. They were not just uncovering the secrets of a house. They were part of a story much larger than themselves, and they were willing to see it through, no matter the cost. The next morning dawned with a thick fog enveloping the town, blurring the edges of reality. Ellie and Theo met at their usual spot, a small cafe tucked away on a quiet street, its windows fogged with warmth and the scent of fresh pastries greeting them as they entered. They settled into a corner booth, the soft hum of conversation around them providing a comforting backdrop. Ellie took a sip of her coffee, the warmth seeping into her bones, grounding her amidst the swirl of their new reality. "I've been thinking about the figure we saw," Theo began, his voice low, cautious. "The one watching us from the shadows. Do you think they're connected to the house?" Ellie nodded slowly, recalling the feeling of being watched, an unseen presence lingering just out of sight. "It's possible. Maybe they're protecting something or hiding." Theo drummed his fingers on the table, a habit when deep in thought. "We need more information. There must be records, something that can tell us more about the house and its history." As they spoke, an idea began to form in Ellie's mind, a plan to delve deeper into the mysteries that surrounded them. "We should check the town archives. If we can find out more about the previous owners, maybe we can piece together what happened." Theo agreed, a spark of excitement in his eyes. The thrill of the unknown urged them on, each discovery a step closer to unraveling the enigma that was Silverstone House. After finishing their breakfast, they made their way to the town hall, a stately building with high arched windows and a grand entrance. Inside, the archives were housed in a small, dusty room lined with shelves of binders and boxes, each one labeled with years and names long forgotten. Ellie and Theo set to work, pulling out documents and scanning them for any mention of the house. Hours passed, the sun inching higher in the sky, casting muted light through the windows. They found deeds, land grants, and letters, each one revealing a piece of the puzzle. Finally, Ellie stumbled upon a worn ledger, its pages yellowed with age. The entries were dated from the late 1800s, detailing the transactions and daily life of the house's earliest days. Among them, a name caught her eye: Jonathan Silverstone, the original owner and namesake of the house. Excitedly, she pointed it out to Theo. "Look, this could be important. Maybe this Jonathan is the key to everything." Theo peered over her shoulder, reading the entry. "It says here he was a collector of rare artifacts. Maybe the mirror was part of his collection." Ellie's mind raced with possibilities. What if the mirror is one of those artifacts? If we can find out more about Jonathan, maybe we can learn what he was trying to protect. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit together, each revelation adding depth to the tapestry of the house's history. But with each answer came more questions. and the feeling that they were being drawn into a story that was both ancient and unfinished. As they left the archives, the sun was beginning its descent, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. Ellie and Theo walked in silence, their thoughts consumed by the mysteries they had uncovered and the shadowy figure that lingered on the edges of their awareness. The air was thick with the promise of rain, the scent of earth and possibility mingling as they made their way back to Ellie's home. The night lay ahead, a vast expanse of darkness and potential. They knew the journey was far from over, but with each step they felt the pull of the unknown, the call of Silverstone House echoing in their hearts. As they neared Ellie's house, Theo paused, his gaze distant, lost in thought. "We need to be careful," he said finally, his voice a whisper carried on the wind. "There's more at stake here than we realize." Ellie nodded, understanding the gravity of his words. They were on the brink of something monumental, a discovery that could change everything. The secrets of Silverstone House were no longer just stories hidden in the shadows. They were alive, waiting to be uncovered. They spent the evening poring over their findings, piecing together the fragments of the past. The mystery of Jonathan Silverstone captivated them, their imaginations running wild with theories and possibilities. As the clock ticked towards midnight, fatigue began to weigh on them, their eyelids heavy with the strain of the day. They settled into the living room, the soft glow of the lamp casting a warm halo over their work. Ellie yawned, stretching her arms above her head. "We should call it a night. We'll need our energy for tomorrow." Theo agreed, though his mind was still buzzing with questions. "Agreed. But first thing tomorrow, we head back to the house. We need to examine the mirror again." With a plan in place, they bid each other good night, the promise of sleep, a welcome reprieve from the whirlwind of their thoughts. But as Ellie lay in bed, the shadows danced around her, whispering secrets and stories, the house's siren call echoing in her dreams. The following morning arrived with a chill in the air, the sun hidden behind a thick blanket of clouds. Ellie and Theo met outside her house, their breath visible in the crisp morning air as they made their way back to Silverstone House. The path to the house felt different this time, the anticipation of discovery mingling with an undercurrent of unease. The air was charged with energy, the shadows deeper, more alive than before. As they reached the house, Ellie paused, her hand resting on the gate. "Are you ready?" Theo nodded, though the gravity of their task weighed heavily on him. "As ready as I'll ever be." Together, they stepped through the gate, the house towering above them, its presence both awe-inspiring and intimidating. The secrets of Silverstone House awaited them, and with each step, they felt the pull of its mysteries, a force too powerful to resist. Inside, the house was silent, its walls echoing the weight of its history. They moved cautiously, their footsteps reverberating through the empty halls as they made their way to the mirror room. The mirror stood waiting, its surface smooth and unbroken, a gateway to the past that beckoned to them. Ellie approached it slowly, her reflection shimmering in its depths, a thousand possibilities glimmering within. Theo joined her, his gaze fixed on the mirror, his mind racing with questions. "What do you see?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ellie studied the mirror, searching its depths for answers. "I'm not sure," she replied, her tone uncertain. "But there's something here. Something we're missing." They stood in silence, the weight of the house pressing down on them, the air thick with anticipation. And then, as if guided by an unseen hand, Ellie reached out, her fingers brushing the surface of the mirror. The world shifted, reality bending around them, the room fading into darkness. Ellie gasped, the sensation of falling overwhelming her senses as she was pulled into the mirror's depths. Theo reached for her, his heart pounding in his chest, but it was too late. Ellie was gone, her presence a ghostly echo in the silence that followed. Panic clawed at Theo, his mind racing with fear and uncertainty. The house seemed to close in around him, its secrets unfurling in the dim light. And then, just as quickly as she had disappeared, Ellie was back, her eyes wide with wonder and fear. She stumbled, Theo catching her before she fell, his relief palpable. "What happened?" he asked, his voice urgent, desperate for answers. Ellie shook her head, her thoughts a jumbled mess. "I don't know," she replied, her voice shaky. "It was like I was somewhere else, like I was part of the house's memories." Theo's mind reeled with the implications of her words. The mirror was more than just an artifact. It was a conduit to the past, a window into the mysteries of Silverstone House. With newfound determination, they knew they had to continue their journey, to uncover the secrets of the mirror and the history it held within. The stakes were higher than ever, the path ahead fraught with danger and discovery. But as long as they had each other, they knew they could face whatever lay ahead, the promise of adventure guiding them through the darkness. The secrets of Silverstone House awaited, and they were ready to uncover them, no matter the cost. The air in Silverstone House was thick with the scent of aged wood and an underlying hint of mildew, a tangible reminder of the years that had passed since it had last been filled with the laughter and life of its previous inhabitants. Dust motes danced lazily in the beams of pale afternoon light that filtered through the high, narrow windows, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and shift of their own accord. Ellie and Theo stood in the heart of the grand foyer, the silence between them punctuated only by the distant creak of the old house settling into the earth. Ellie, her mind still reeling from the vision she'd experienced in front of the mirror, tightened her grip on Theo's hand. Her pulse was still racing, her breath coming in shallow, uneven bursts, as she tried to make sense of the images that had flooded her mind. There had been faces she didn't recognize, faces that seemed to ripple and change as if caught in the current of time itself. A woman with long, dark hair and eyes that burned with a fierce intensity. A man with a scar etched across his cheek, his expression one of sorrow and determination. And there were voices, snippets of conflict. Theo squeezed her hand gently, his expression a mix of concern and curiosity. "Are you sure you're okay?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, as though speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile connection between them and the mysteries of the house. Ellie nodded slowly, taking a deep breath to steady herself. "I think so," she said, her voice still tinged with uncertainty. It was so real, Theo. Like I was really there. Like I was them." She paused, her eyes searching his for understanding. "What do you think it means?" Theo rubbed the back of his neck thoughtfully, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I'm not sure," he admitted, looking around the foyer as if expecting the house to offer up its secrets willingly. "But it sounds like the mirror is more than just a window into the past. It's like it's trying to tell us something, show us something important. Maybe it has something to do with what happened here, why the house was abandoned." Ellie shivered, the memory of the vision still clinging to her like a shadow. "Do you think it's dangerous?" she asked, unable to keep the edge of fear from her voice. Theo hesitated, his mind racing through the possibilities. "I don't know," he said finally. But I think we need to find out more about this house, about the people who lived here. If the mirror is connected to them, it might help us understand what's going on." Ellie nodded, her determination bolstered by Theo's calm, steady presence. "Then we need to keep exploring," she said, her voice gaining strength. "There has to be something here that can give us answers." Together they began to move through the house, their footsteps echoing softly in the empty halls. The walls were lined with faded, peeling wallpaper, the edges curling like old parchment. They made their way to the library, a sprawling room filled with towering shelves that stretched up to the ceiling, packed with dusty tomes and leather-bound volumes whose spines were cracked and faded with age. A grand fireplace dominated one wall, its mantel adorned with intricately carved figures that seemed to writhe and twist in the flickering light filtering through the stained glass windows. Ellie felt a chill pass over her as she stepped inside, the air in the room cooler than the rest of the house, as if the fireplace had not seen flames in decades. Theo moved to one of the shelves, running his fingers along the spines of the books as he searched for anything that might provide a clue. "We should start here," he said, glancing over at Ellie. "There might be something in these books that can tell us more about the history of the house, the people who lived here." Ellie nodded, joining him in his search. She pulled a book from the shelf, its cover embossed with a gilded title that was almost illegible beneath the layers of dust and grime. She opened it carefully, the pages brittle and yellowed with age, and began to read, her gaze flicking over the old-fashioned script. For a while, the only sound in the library was the soft rustle of turning pages, the silence wrapping around them like a cloak. Ellie found herself drawn into the stories contained within the books, tales of the house's previous owners, their triumphs and tragedies, their lives woven into the very fabric of Silverstone House. She wondered about the people she had seen in her vision, whether their stories were recorded here, waiting to be rediscovered. As she read, she became aware of a faint sound, a rhythmic tapping that seemed to echo through the walls, growing louder and more insistent. She glanced up, meeting Theo's eyes across the room. He had heard it too, his expression tense and alert. "Do you hear that?" Ellie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Theo nodded, his gaze fixed on the door that led back into the hallway. "It's coming from upstairs," he said, his voice filled with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Ellie's heart began to pound, a mixture of fear and excitement coursing through her veins. "Should we go see what it is?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Theo hesitated, weighing the potential risks against the need for answers. "I think we should," he said finally. "If there's something up there, it might help us understand what's happening here." Together, they left the library, the tapping sound growing louder as they climbed the grand staircase that spiraled up to the second floor. The steps creaked beneath their feet, the sound echoing through the empty halls like the whisper of ghosts. Ellie felt a thrill of anticipation mixed with dread, the hairs on the back of her neck standing on end as they reached the landing. The tapping was louder now, coming from behind a closed door at the end of the hallway. Beyond the door was a small, dimly lit room, the walls lined with old maps and charts that depicted long-forgotten places. In the center of the room was a large oak table, its surface covered with scattered papers and strange artifacts that glinted in the low light. But it was the figure seated at the table that caught their attention, a shadowy silhouette hunched over the papers, the source of the rhythmic tapping as a pen tapped idly against the wood. Ellie's breath caught in her throat, her heart racing as she realized they were not alone. The figure was shrouded in shadow, its features obscured by the dim light. But there was something undeniably human about it, a presence that felt both ancient and unsettlingly familiar. "Hello?" Theo called out, his voice steady despite the tension that thrummed between them. The figure paused, the tapping ceasing as it slowly turned to face them. Ellie felt a chill run down her spine as the figure's eyes met hers, eyes that seemed to see right through her, filled with a wisdom and sorrow that spoke of centuries gone by. "You found the heart of the house," the figure said, its voice low and tinged with something that might have been regret. "But do you have the courage to uncover its soul?" Ellie glanced at Theo, seeing her own fear mirrored in his eyes, but also a flicker of determination. They had come this far, had glimpsed the mysteries that lay beneath the surface of Silverstone House. Now, standing on the precipice of discovery, they had to decide whether to take the final leap into the unknown. "We want to understand," Theo said, his voice firm and steady. "We want to know the truth." The figure nodded slowly, its gaze sweeping over them with an intensity that made Ellie feel as if she were being weighed and measured. "The truth is buried deep," it said, gesturing to the scattered papers and artifacts. "In these pages are the echoes of those who came before, their stories intertwined with the fate of this house. If you wish to uncover them, you must be willing to face the darkness within." Ellie felt a shiver pass through her, the words resonating with a truth she could feel deep in her bones. She nodded, stepping forward to join Theo at the table, her gaze sweeping over the papers haphazardly scattered across its surface. They were filled with sketches and notes, fragments of a story that was both thrilling and terrifying in its scope. As she reached for one of the pages, her fingers brushing against the rough parchment, the room seemed to shift around her, the shadows deepening and the air growing thick with anticipation. She could feel the weight of history pressing down on her, the echoes of the past whispering in her ears, urging her to listen, to understand. Theo leaned over the table, his brow furrowed in concentration as he studied a map that depicted the grounds of Silverstone House, marked with strange symbols and cryptic annotations. "What do you think these mean?" he asked, tracing a finger over one of the symbols. Ellie examined the map, her mind racing as she tried to piece together the puzzle. "They look like coordinates," she said slowly, her voice filled with a sense of wonder. "Maybe they lead to something important, something hidden." The figure watched them in silence, its presence a dark silhouette against the fading light. "Follow the path," it said softly, its voice carrying the weight of centuries. "But beware the shadows. They guard their secrets jealously." Ellie and Theo exchanged a glance, their resolve strengthening as they absorbed the figure's warning. They had come too far to turn back now, their curiosity and determination propelling them forward into the unknown. Together, they gathered the papers and artifacts, their minds buzzing with possibilities and questions. As they left the room, the figure watched them go, its eyes glinting with an inscrutable light. Silverstone House was a labyrinth of secrets, its history woven into the very fabric of its walls. As they stepped out into the fading light of the afternoon, the house loomed behind them, a silent sentinel watching over their path. Ellie glanced back at it, feeling a connection that ran deeper than she could have ever imagined. The secrets of the house were calling to her, a siren song that she could not ignore. She and Theo were bound together by the threads of fate, their journey just beginning. With their hearts and minds aligned, they set out toward the coordinates marked on the map, their footsteps echoing through the empty grounds. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges and revelations. But as long as they had each other, they knew they could face whatever lay in store. The secrets of Silverstone House awaited, and they were ready to uncover them, no matter the cost.